Blacks are to blame. In a black majority country, blacks shouldn't need affirmative action, employment equity, or BEE. I hate these policies, but the reality is that most blacks think these policies are necessary. The reason is that the formal business sector is dominated by whites, the result being that black job seekers are in the same situation in which they would be if South Africa were a white majority country. Of course, whites are not responsible for this situation. In 1994, it might have been justified to blame apartheid. But subsequently, the ANC led an unprecedented plunder of resources that could have been used to establish black business. While blacks are used to seeking employment, Indians have an entirely different culture involving doing business collectively as extended families. For Indians, the workplace is an extension of home in which relatives and black helpers play their respective roles. For whites, business is an extension of the community in which various racial groups play their respective roles. Black females are the cleaners and tea girls. White black males are messengers and garden boys. This is an unhealthy situation which affirmative action and employment equity sought to remedy. The idea was that a business cannot optimize relations with its 21st century black majority customer base if its internal structure reflected apartheid era stereotypes. The destruction of infrastructure since 1994 proves that the state abused AA and EE to appoint grossly incompetent people in jobs for which they were not qualified. However, in the private sector, there is no evidence that AA or EE have been applied seriously. And if so, there is no evidence that it has had a negative effect on competence. The big problem is that in white circles, there is the perception that whenever a black candidate gets a serious job ahead of white candidates, then the black candidate is an incompetent who is nothing more than an affirmative action beneficiary. Personally, I went to school during the apartheid era of strict segregation. So I had to research the current situation to establish whether all white students always perform better than all black students. I would call this situation universal outperformance of blacks by whites. Everyone agrees that blacks have never been universally outperformed by whites. There is therefore no rational justification for the usual assumption that whenever a black person gets a decent job ahead of whites, then the black is an affirmative action beneficiary who is otherwise incompetent. This is a racist assumption which is based on the preposterous idea that skin color alone determines the worth of an individual. Even if the government did not promote affirmative action and employment equity, it would probably benefit the private sector to practice it in order to optimize its own capacity to deal with a diverse customer base. It is only the public sector which practices a toxic form of affirmative action and employment equity, which only benefits political party cadres and their friends and relatives. All race groups are adversely affected by this unfair discrimination. Only grossly underperforming whites would feel unwanted in the private sector. To blame blacks for that looks like exactly what a racist would do.